this is one of the best months to be invested in Tesla. I'm going to start by saying that this is not a buy signal. I did actually buy some calls today, which I'm going to share my exact position with you in a little bit. However, historically, Tesla is green 69% of the time in November. You guys, if you've been watching for a while now, you know that we were talking about September and October being terrible months, and we were right, just following a seasonality chart. Now going into November, 70% of the time we are green, and on average of that, 70% of the time we're green, it's a return of 10%. Let's look at the chart first. This is a daily chart, and the indicators that we are currently running at this moment is just simply going to be the Smart Money Concepts indicator by Lux Algo, which you can just go up to indicators and you can type in Smart Money Concepts, and there's actually a video that we have on our channel talking about how we set that up. And what we're looking for is these major sell blocks, major support blocks, and areas of interest. We also have a volume profile that's set up here, and the volume profile is on the daily chart, which we're looking at currently, and it's set up for the past 252 days. All of our volume was sitting here between $241, as we said before, up to $280. If we were to actually go through and draw a trend line, you could see that we had this symmetrical triangle that was setting up, and we were covering for a very long time before we ended up breaking after earnings. We had a really good short position here where we had this change of character that we've been talking about for a bit. I thought that we were going to potentially bounce up to about 236 before moving down to the 190s, because the 190s have been our target for a while now, but I figured there would be a little bit of a relief rally. That didn't happen. Even though we bounced, look at how bearish the candle is closed. It's such a bearish candle, followed up by this third candle, which closed significantly lower. This is a really bad sign. The other thing I want to talk about too is a couple of areas of interest of low volume. This big volume profile on the right side here, these horizontal volume bars. For anybody who's new, this is called a volume profile. Normal volume bars, the ones that are vertical, up and down at the bottom of your screen, which I don't have on right now, those are great, and they're going to show you how many shares were traded within a day. But what they're not going to show you is at what price those shares were actually traded. And the reason that we want to know those prices is not just because they're technical levels of support and resistance, but it's because it's within these heavy areas of volume that we have institutional levels and institutions taking positions. The way that a hedge fund or an institution takes a position is not the way that we take positions, because they could take weeks or months to build a position because they're taking such a massive trade. And if we're looking here on Tesla stock, the interest that we're looking at is 243 up to 264 and about 198 down to 180. The thin areas that you can see here on Tesla stock's chart, this big one here from about 244 down to where we are of 190, these moves are always extremely aggressive and very fast. For instance, this was a move that occurred from Wednesday, May 2023, so the 31st, the very last day of May, 9 days later to June of 2023. And this here was a 24% move to the upside. We broke up over there, and then look what ended up happening. This move was just in 8 days, guys, 14%, followed by another 15% move in 11 days. This was a false break. And now this one has been a 20% crash, basically, in 14 days. So these areas, the stock can move so fast through these levels. And so the reason that I ended up going long today is for a couple of reasons. Number one, my target for the short ended up hitting. I still think we can see 190 potentially, but I think that the risk versus reward is just too good to not enter here, especially since we could see a lot of bulls stepping in at this level. Now, before we actually draw out our risk profile and how I ended up taking the trade and what my analysis is going to be, I do want to explain that if this level is given up on 195, to about 190, it's not good. We're going to go over SPY towards the end of this video, as well as triple Qs, and we'll talk about what levels that they're both pushed at right now. But all three of these, Tesla stock, SPY, and QQQ, are all sitting at very important levels. Looking here now, you can see that we have this massive sell-off that occurs. I'll actually go back through and we'll take a look at what was happening going into earnings. Because for those of you who haven't been with us for the past couple of weeks, I want you guys to get an understanding of what we are looking at. We know that we were watching this setup for that potential move to the upside or downside. We were looking for this potential breakout for the symmetrical triangle, and then this potential breakout. And obviously that did not occur until earnings, where we finally got that big move to the downside. Once break of structure occurred, which was right here at 233, and we had already filled into this gap, this is where the potential move down to 190 isn't bad. A lot of people were asking, like, how do I know if I should be shorting the stock or getting rid of the stock after this drop on earnings? This is going to be a high confluent level, which just means that this is a level that a lot of different types of traders and institutions will be watching at. The stock is already down pretty significantly since July of 2023. It's down nearly 33%. It's a very solid support level at 200. Point of control is sitting here, and we're very, very oversold. Doesn't mean it can't go lower. But what I'm planning to do is hopefully we can see this bounce back up. So if we go draw our fib out, we're going to go from this swing high down to most recent swing low. You're going to notice here that we have our 0.5 right here at 232.01. But look at where our golden Fibonacci level sets up, 0.618 to 0.786. This level sits right here where we start to get some heavy levels of volume, which will act as potential resistances. So what I'm thinking here is there's probably a good chance that we could see a dead cat bounce, which we've been talking about could happen for a while. A dead cat bounce meaning we move back up to about 50% of that retracement, which would be 20% move to the upside. The 0.5 is a decent time to start to go short, but what we'd really be looking for is to move all the way back up to 245.10, because this would be where we start to accumulate a lot of volume on the volume profile. It's also where the 70% and the 0.786 on the Fibonacci levels are, which is a clear indication to short the living crap out of Tesla. And so in a perfect world, I'm a long-term investor as well, but as a trader's mindset, in a perfect world, what I'm really looking for here was this entry today. I got in down here around 196.27. I'm looking for this move up to about 240. I'm looking to set my stop loss probably here at about 189 break. And what this will do is give us literally a 6.5 to 1 RVR, meaning that we are risking 3.5% to make 23.5%. If we were trading with shares alone, if we had $10,000, our potential loss is $372, and our potential reward is $2,340. Now, the chances of this panning out, especially all the way back up to 240, I think is probably 50-50. But think about it. You could literally lose 6 times and with one win make back all of your money. So being a profitable trader does not mean that you have to have an extremely high win rate, although it always helps. So if we see this potential bounce up now that the 190, 195, we didn't quite hit 190 yet, but 195 is taken out. If that occurs, then what I'm going to be looking to do again is to go short. In a perfect world, going short, up here around 245, then I'd be looking to take my profit back down here around 194 and setting my stop loss probably up around 260, which would give me a worse RVR than going bullish here, but a much higher chance of profiting, and I'd have about 4 to 1 RVR. Once again, meaning that if we had a $10,000 position short, our potential profit is $2,129 to the downside, and our potential loss is going to be $513. And if we zoom out to the weekly here, the very coincidental thing that we're going to start to see is that we have a fair value gap here back from earnings. And so an actual fill of this fair value gap, which happens most of the time, would be a 20% move to the upside, sitting there, once again, like we said, at about $240. So is this going to pan out this way? Probably. I don't think we're going to, we'll see. Right now I got like 60% conviction in this. And if it does, that's great, because we'll make a ton of money on the way up and we'll make a ton of money on the way down. And if this doesn't happen, if the Fed comes out this week, which we're going to go over what you guys should be watching for as a Tesla stock, trader or a shareholder in Tesla, which I'm both, we're going to go over that and what that's going to mean for the week in a little bit. But right now, if this level breaks of 190, I'm fully confident in it moving back down to $160, which is where we have this bullish order block. And then if $160 breaks, because look how low the volume is, we will drop right back down to $120. So we're at a real make or break level here. And I do believe that we're going to end up seeing the market probably bounce here and move our way back up into the 240s. And I will be shorting as soon as we start to get back up into that level. So let's go through first on now talking about Twitter, because I went through and I actually had questions that I wanted you guys to ask. So if you ever have any questions on any tickers you want me to look at, or any questions about Tesla specifically that you want me to go over, let me know. You guys seem to really enjoy these longer videos, talking more about fundamentals, going over different tools that we use to evaluate Tesla, the S&P 500, much more. And so what I want to do is give you guys the ability to not only get access to trades. I threw out this trade today on SPXS. So if you guys are still here too at 12 minutes, I know you guys are legit. So I'll share some sauce with you. So I ended up taking this position today on SPXS, which is short of the SPX, and SPXL is long. So we ended up taking this position. I call this out here. So if you ever want to get access to my trades, go get them over on Twitter and join our Discord community. There's over 12,000 members. So I was calling that out. We were watching the market run. I'm talking about this potential entry here on Tesla. And I was asking you guys, what do you want some questions answered of? So what we're going to go through and is look at all the replies that you guys have, which is just a couple of them. But I believe, number one, it would be really good to get your guys' feedback on the type of content you want. So go over to my Twitter and comment on that of what you would like answered for tomorrow's video. But I think it'll be really good because a lot of these questions are questions that you guys seem to have anyway. So let's start with this one. Ishi J, do you think there might be an end of the year rally for Tesla? And when do you think SPY will be a good position to go short? So we already kind of talked about Tesla end of the year rally. We'll see. Statistically, it's there. From a seasonality standpoint, we should have an end of the year rally. If we do end up bouncing here, we could move up to highs of 260. That could potentially bring us out to that end of the year rally, right? A potential 32% move in the next 63 days. I'm not saying I think it's going to happen. I think that I don't know. Honestly, I can't, this is going to sound dumb, but I can't look that far ahead a lot of the times right now. But we are bouncing at this 0.5 fib. And like we said, if that doesn't hold, next level is 180. So I think the chances of us pulling down to 180 into the rest of the year is probably about 45%. I think the chances of us bouncing here and rallying for the next month is very high. I think it's probably about 65%. And I do think that the lowest we would probably see is down at about $180. So what I would say is I can't give you my prediction of what's going to unfold, but I think that if we're able to hold 200 on Tesla, we're probably going to rally for at least November. And if we aren't able to hold 190/200 on Tesla, I think we're going to drain in November down to about 170, 180, worst comes to worst 160, and then we can reassess going into December. The big thing that I would be worried about, though, looking at this bigger time frame, is if this broke. If this swing low to swing high here was broken, like if 160 was broken, we're moving back down to $90. That's where I would honestly really be worried. So at this moment, I think that we just have to watch that level. And then as far as the S&P 500, which I think when would be a good time to go short, I wanted to talk about SPY anyway. So this is going to be absolutely perfect. You guys can see here, I've drawn out a Fibonacci, and it's setting up the same exact way that you guys were talking about, or that we were talking about with Tesla. So this is going to actually be perfect because I plan to talk about this anyway. So who was that? Ishi, thank you for asking this question. So this is going to be really good. So you guys can see on SPY, we had this change character. We had this massive sell-off. We came back up. We tested this order block level. Bearish order block came in. SPY drained its way down. Now, what do we talk about all the time? Liquidity levels, and we talk about the volume profile. So volume profile, you can see we had no volume from 432 down to 415. So everyone who's here is just stuck holding the bag. Big money is not going to step in to buy the dip. Everyone's like, buy the dip, buy the dip. Dude, if big money's not buying your dip, buying the dip does nothing. It just doesn't. So I'm not buying the dip till the big guys buy the dip. And the big guys bought the dip today, right? Look at this, the 3-bar setup. They bought the dip today. So at this point, if we take our fib, swing high to our swing low today, we see aggressive price action bouncing off of a solid level. And where does our Fibonacci retracement tool line up? right up here around 426 where we have this volume. So I think that SPY in the next couple of days will probably bounce up to about 426. And to answer your question, I'm looking to go short on the S&P 500 between 426.50 and about 429. And I will be looking from there to enter my short position, take my profit back down at 412, and set my stop loss up here above 438. So that would give me only a 2-to-1 RVR, but I would feel very, very strong about that position. And if I wanted to be real finicky, or actually more particular, I would wait to go short at 432, which is the final level of that golden zone. And then we could set our stop loss up here. So it'd be like 2.7. But I think a really good bounce spike can happen in November, and I'm going to be looking to short if those levels are actually taken out. So very, very good question. End of the month and end of year targets for Kim, kind of the same thing that we just talked about for Tesla. I think that the end of the year for Tesla will most likely end up back where we are right now. I think the more realistic thing is that all of November, beginning of November, we're going to rally, maybe taper off, and I think we'll sell off and probably end the year at about 190. I hope it's not the case. Like, I hope we just rally. I doubt that's going to happen, but we'll see. I think we'll probably end this year around $190 for sure. Curious on hedging strategy, says Sam, whether it be for SPY or an individual stock. So I've talked before, and I want to start making more evergreen videos, which means, not just daily analysis, but videos you guys can continue to watch. As far as my hedging strategies, there's a couple of ways you can do it. On any options that you see, you're going to have a delta, whether you have calls or puts. If you have a negative delta, then that means obviously you have puts. If you have a regular delta, you have calls. The way that you hedge a position is you equal out the amount of delta entirely. So if I own, let's just say, like, I'm going to go into my bar replay right here, and let's just say that I go and I buy 100 shares right now of Tesla. My delta is 100 because one share equals one delta. So if you look at your calls right now and it's like plus 85 delta, that means for every single share or every single options contract that you own, it is equivalent to owning 88 shares of Tesla. That's what your exposure is, which is kind of cool. So you can actually, like, now, if you're someone with a smaller account and you're like, oh, dude, like I got 100, or I'm sorry, 100 delta. Maybe I have 2 calls that are 50 delta apiece, right? 2 calls at 50 delta apiece. 2 of those contracts at a 5.0 delta, that's going to be a delta of 1 or 1.0. So that means you would basically have a delta of 1. And so what you're going to do is you're going to, times 100. So you'd have 100 delta because, you have 100 times that contract. So if you had a delta entirely of 100, then in order to actually hedge your position, you'd have to go short 100 shares. If your delta was 48, you'd have to go short 48 shares to have the same equal position. And that's called delta hedging, which I know a lot of you guys asked about me doing market maker videos. And the way that market makers make their money is they stay delta neutral. And you can actually make a lot of money being delta neutral if you are a market maker, because you're facilitating deals and you're making money off of volatility, which is not something I ever hear anybody talk about on YouTube when it comes to trading and investing. So I think that's something I can definitely share with you guys. But overall, I'm usually going to be delta neutral by adding puts into my position, or I could just short shares if I really wanted. And I can do a comprehensive video on that if you want as well. How do you think Tesla's setting up for swing trading right now? We already answered that question, Steven. So basically, I'm in calls, and I think we're going to probably move up. And how low can Tesla go in a 2024 recession? That's a really good question. A lot of you guys have also been asking for the bearish thesis, which I put together this weekend while I was away, and I'm going to be shooting that video this week. A lot of people are asking, what would the worst case scenario look like for Tesla from bearish fundamentals? So going into this week, as we said before, we have a Fed decision. A Fed decision is going to be important, not because of the actual decision, but it's going to be really important as to the tone. And this is going to tie back with Daryl's question about a 2024 recession. The big thing that everyone's really going to be looking for is to see whether Jerome Powell insinuates that we're going to see another rate hike in December. And also, what is the outlook going to be? Does it seem like he's very hawkish and looking like he's going to raise rates? Or does it seem like they're going to continue to taper off and be a little less aggressive going into the next year? Because if the bond yield is inverted right now, which we did a whole video on that last week, you guys should go check it out and get access to that PDF for free going over what that means and why it always triggers a recession, go check it out. But when we have this type of economic environment where we're seeing companies not give guidance because they're worried, or giving bad guidance, which a lot of people just don't want to do, they'd rather not give guidance. You see earnings calls like Tesla, where in this instance with Elon, you have CEOs who seem to be very worried about the economy. We obviously have war that a lot of people are worried about. We have an election coming. Like, there's so many things that I think can play a really bad part going into 2024. And so I am inherently not just on Tesla, I'm very bearish for 2024. And I don't have massive shorts open. I always play whatever's in front of me, and the market, if you really want to make a lot of money over the long term, the market always goes up. Like, I'm not scaring you guys. Like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm always objective, and I'm always usually bullish, funny enough, until recently. But I just think there's a lot of worry and a lot of things that we have to look at. And I think that at the end of the day, if deliveries were to shrink drastically, if they had to do price increases because they're just not making enough on the bottom line, depending if supply chain issues and what ends up happening with the Cybertruck is another thing. There's just so much that can go wrong here that I will say I do think the worst that we could see Tesla in 2024, and I hope I don't have to come back to this video here on the 30th of October and say I was right. I hope I can come back and say I was wrong. But I think the lowest we could go is probably like $75. I doubt that would happen, but I think that there is a chance that we could potentially get down to $75. And I don't say that to worry you guys, right? Like, I say it because if you're going to be, first of all, a trader, you have to just like look at things objectively. Like, you can't have your emotions. You're going to get absolutely murdered. And as an investor, it's even more like that. If you're someone who thinks that you're here to make, and this is taking my trader hat off and my trader cognition and my risk management, everything. If I'm just looking at this as an investor, if you think that you're going to pull a profit on this in less than 2 years, I think you're sadly mistaken. Like, unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, but if you're here to sell your shares in 2 years and make bank, I think it's not a good move. And you can do as you wish. I don't care to sway your decisions in either way. I think that if you're going to be an investor in Tesla, you got to be an investor in Tesla. You have to be ready if it runs to 400 or 500, and you have to be ready if it moves down to $80. It's just the truth. And a lot of people won't accept that shit. So always understand the accepted risk of investing in trading. Always understand that if we were to break some of these levels, we have fair value gaps at 144, down at 89, down at 77, down at 43. Like, I don't think we're going to get that low. But you got to be ready to accept it, man. So we'll see what happens. And I think somebody else asked, which I can't see here, they asked about if I still think this is delusion or capitulation. If you guys watched the video I did a couple of weeks ago, it was a video you guys really loved, talking about market cycles and talking about how this right here would have been our denial phase as we bounced up. I'm sorry, this would have been our denial phase. And this has been our capitulation phase, which means the mean would be back down here at like $100, maybe about 80. So yeah, I think it's still happened. I do. If you guys are still here after 25 minutes, congratulations, and pat yourself on the back. You guys are legit. You're serious about trading. You're serious about your investing. And I'm telling you guys, there's no way in hell if you take something seriously that you're not going to fucking do it well and that you're not going to eventually be a master. I just promise you. If you guys want to work with me and trade with me every single day, go check out our Discord. And once you're over there, go to the upgrade section. You guys get access to all my trades. Today alone, we closed out close to $10,000. Last week was just a bitch. Last week was like one of my worst weeks, but great start to the day, great start to the week right now. So go check it out, guys. It's $50 a month. I have to put it behind a paywall just because I need to not have scammers, and I need to make sure that whoever is over there is someone who's actually take this legit. So come join us, come be part of the squad. Go ahead and check it out. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.